Does unconditional love even exist? Does it even exist? I'm gonna go where I have a little bit better signal. My signal's kind of weak out here. I've been thinking about this, and I think it's an important conversation to have because a wise man once said, the higher the expectations, the higher the frustrations. The higher the expectations, the higher the frustrations. I think this is good. And I was thinking about it. Is it even possible to love a person unconditionally in this world? Meaning, you are willing to, how can I word this? Consistently and continuously offer up yourself and from yourself this unconditional positive regard, kindness, long suffering. Is long suffering with another human being possible? Are long suffering for another human being possible without there having to be conditions? I see my signals a lot over here. Can humans exercise long suffering towards each other continuously and there be no conditions in place? Can human beings love another human being consistently and ongoing without there having to be conditions? What's up, A1 Yummy? Is it possible to love another human being unconditionally? I've been really thinking about that because when we're young, we think about love as it having to come with like no conditions. Like you have to continuously sacrifice yourself for a person, even if they're not showing up, even if things aren't perfect. You're right. Jesus is king. Even if they make mistakes or they fall short, we look at love as this unbiased, unconditional, positive regard, regardless of the circumstances. We expect our partners, our families to love us free of conditions, but we live in a conditional world. Everything is about the transaction and the contract, terms and conditions. Jesus is king. And I'm thinking, like, outside of Jesus Christ and the sacrifice that he's made for our life, is it possible for human beings in the flesh to love each other unconditionally? Is there such thing as unconditional love on the human plane amongst ourselves and each other? And this is so important because I believe as men, what drives a lot of our frustration, because there's a quote that says the higher the frustration or the higher the expectation, the higher the frustration. We expect women, and this isn't all men, but for example, for men who do believe in love and who do believe in marriage and family, a lot of times we feel like, well, if I'm providing for you, if I'm protecting you, if all your needs are covered, and I'm making sure that you don't have to want for anything, or maybe I'm allowing you the freedom to support or provide or invest in this relationship, whatever that culture of your relationship is. But sometimes as men, I think we have this expectation that if I'm meeting your needs and I'm doing the best I can as a man to show up for you and meet your needs like you expect of me, then it should be no question of, you giving me that unconditional positive regard. There should be no argument on, me receiving kindness and me receiving your trust continuously and consistently. And when maybe our partner's moody or maybe she's upset about something or maybe he's upset about something, and anytime there's a break in that consistency of that love, I noticed that men get mad as hell. Like, oh, she don't love me. And a lot of times, men, sometimes we can be afraid to be vulnerable. I appreciate the subs and the likes. God bless you guys. I think sometimes as men, we're afraid to just be open and honest and be like, man, I don't think she loved me anymore. Uh, Things have changed. Things are different. We're not communicating as much. I don't get those smiles and those good morning text messages anymore. I think she's falling out of love with me. And I think sometimes men are afraid to admit that. So, a lot of times we react out of sadness or anger or frustration or disappointment, or we just might just shut down. But sometimes we got to ask ourselves as men, is unconditional love even possible? Is it even realistic considering the human condition? And conditions necessarily aren't always a bad thing. Maybe for her, in order for her to feel like she can activate that unconditional positive regard for you or that love for you, maybe she needs you to be a little bit understanding about her need for freedom or her need for space and to socialize with her girls. Maybe she needs you to be a little bit flexible when she wants to go hang out with her girls, but you want to do movie night. And maybe you might say, nah, maybe babe, we stay in today and we watch a movie and we just spend one-on-one time together. And she wanted to go out. And because she's staying in with you, maybe she's a little bit upset because she wanted to hang out with her girls, but she'll do it. And or maybe you guys get into an argument and you have some conflict. And sometimes men will be like, man, I'm doing all of this for her. I'm providing for her. I let her go out other times. Why is she acting like that? Is the love not there? She don't love me. If you love me, wouldn't you show up for me? Wouldn't you show up and do, once you meet me halfway? But is love unconditional, right? Is love truly unconditional? And I think it starts with our parents. I don't want to say it's impossible because anything is possible with the Lord God. But if your parents have modeled to you growing up that you were only worthy of support and acknowledgement and validation based off of your performance, because that's a lot of what's going on in these households. The parents are modeling to these younger people that you're only worthy if you produce. You have to get good grades. You have to do your part in the house. You have to do the chores. You have to do your part. And what that communicates to the adult mind, because we keep that inner child, is like, I'm only worthy of love if I'm performing. I'm only worthy of love if I'm producing. And we project that to other people. You're only worthy of love or acknowledgement when you're producing or when you're performing. And sometimes this is why women can be hard on their husbands, and I'm seeing this a lot in my counseling. So that's why I'm talking about it, because I'm getting a lot of couples and even in my own relationship sometimes where we struggle with just this idea of, is it unrealistic for us to expect unconditional love in this world that we live in based on conditions? Based on conditions. Are we being as effective? Hey, what's up to the chat? Salute to you guys. Is unconditional love realistic? Is unconditional love possible based off of our human condition? And when you're loving somebody or you're in a relationship with somebody, your best bet is to meet that relationship and meet that person halfway. And also to be in reality. And also to be in reality. I think the only unconditional love we're going to get this lifetime is by anchoring ourselves in scripture and in God's word and all the blessings that he's given the human condition for us to live and for us to survive and thrive that we didn't really ask for. Because when you based unconditional love on another human being, you don't know what that other person is struggling with, what that other person is, what they're going through, what kind of weight they're carrying. It's hard for a human to unconditionally love another human being when they're struggling with weaknesses and the limitations of their human nature. It's hard for them to show up for you because unconditional love is almost like perfection. It's hard for them to show up for you in the perfect way at all times because we're imperfect. We're imperfect. And I just think about that. Like, is unconditional love even possible? And I truly believe is if unconditional love is possible, the unconditional love has to start with yourself first as an individual. You have to first unconditionally love yourself, show up for yourself, be kind to yourself, give yourself some grace when you make mistakes, when you fall short, when you don't hit the mark. Maybe you might be, limited in certain areas or you might fall short in certain areas. You have to unconditionally love yourself during those periods, man. During those times, you have to give yourself grace. I think that's another way of saying God's grace is just unconditional love. This isn't something you've earned or performed for. I've given you this love and this unconditional positive regard and favor based off of who I am. And a lot of times, what drives relationships apart and drives frustration in relationships. Hey, what's up, uh, Tishla? What drives relationships apart and what drives frustration in intimate relationships is when we expect unconditional love from our partner and they show up in their humanity. They show up in their humanity. They have weaknesses. They have areas they're still struggling with and building and strengthening. They're still a work in progress. They're still a work in progress. But the dark side of it is when love is just based on conditions. I mean, sometimes as human beings, we move the goalposts. So we might say, yeah, I want a woman that, is submissive and she lets the man, be the leader of the house and the spiritual leader of the house. And she respects me and she's not embarrassing me out in public. I want a woman that cook, that clean, that, do the things that are expected of her in the house. And, if she wants to produce, make money, do her thing, that's fine. I just want a woman that respects me and loves me and things like that. But then when you get that and she shows up in her humanity, because nobody's perfect. Maybe one day she didn't cook dinner. Maybe she's been kind of moody. Maybe she has other things that are going on in her life she's struggling with. So she may not talk to you as much or feed your ego as much. Sometimes men will just shut down, like, damn, I'm doing this and this for her and she's not satisfied. She's not thankful. And the same thing can happen for men too. The same thing can happen for men too. But just this idea of like unconditional love, man, it's like, can you think of somebody in the chat and people who are watching, and you can leave it in the comments. Can you guys think of somebody who actually loved you unconditionally? Like whether you produced or not, performed or not, they still showed up for you and loved you. They still exercise patience because biblically love carries the spirit of like long suffering, patience, no keeping record of wrongs. And I think that's the hardest thing that we struggle with as humans because we feel like if we don't keep record of the things that you've done wrong, we feel like we're just kind of enabling you and allowing you to keep screwing up. I need to let you know and remind you of where you're falling short so that way maybe it'll keep the fire under you to do better. If I don't keep a record of wrongs, I'm afraid that it'll just keep you doing wrong. So it's almost like the Bible is really genius in that it really writes expectations to a nature that is designed to do the opposite. The Bible and living according to the Bible was not an easy thing. When it said don't keep record, love keeps no record of wrongs, I was just thinking like, man, can you imagine being in a relationship where the other person is not keeping the score? And like I said, it starts with us. A lot of the biblical definitions of love can also be applied to the individual. Not keeping a record of wrongs on yourself. You make a mistake, you fall short, you do something that you know you probably shouldn't have done, not keeping record. You know what? Repenting, putting it behind you, modifying your behavior, doing better. You know, unconditional love, man. Unconditional love. And yeah, it's really difficult to love someone unconditionally. It's really difficult. And the conditions are constantly changing. Each generation, the younger the generations get, the more rigid and demanding the conditions are. Before it was like the conditions weren't really that high. It was sort of like, you show up, you be loyal, you be a good man, you provide, you protect, you're good. Some cultures they're like you gotta have a house, You got to have real estate. You got to have a certain amount. It's like the conditions just get more challenging as time goes on. And I think what for men, what makes us afraid of conditional love is actually meeting those conditions, and it's not enough. I think that strikes the fear of man when it comes to dealing with women. It's like we meet your conditions as a woman, and it's still not enough. I think that's why men just would rather not deal with love in general, because if I meet your conditions and I meet your expectations and I'm still being rewarded with difficulties and challenges, I'm going to feel like I wasted my time. So one thing that sucks about conditional love is that it's like the goalpost keeps moving. Okay, I made a certain income, I made a certain threshold, I have a house. Okay, now we need to modify the house. Now you got to have more income because now we got kids. It's like when you're dealing with conditional love in the human sphere, it's going to always keep getting more and more demanding because human desire grows more and more as that relationship advances. Maybe you didn't have kids before. Now you got a kid. Now you got to worry about daycare. Now you got to worry about school. Now you got to worry about diapers. Now you got to worry about savings. Now you got to think about college. See, it's like the human condition is constantly, the conditions are constantly evolving. So that's why I can see where conditional love just is a never ending rabbit hole. It's a never ending rabbit hole. And a woman can't guarantee to you as a man that if you meet these conditions, everything is going to be fine because you're dealing with another human being. So I think as men, you have to accept that love is all about taking a risk, and it's about having faith that despite my human ego not, getting everything I want at all times, I'm still going to trust the process and trust that I made the right decision, essentially. And that's hard. But is unconditional love even possible? Is unconditional love even possible? Even parents, they put conditions on their kids. We need you to show up with respect. We need you to be respectful to us. We need you to listen to us. We need you, we put all these rules and expectations on our kids for good reason. But in reality, we're just socially engineering them for conditional love. You follow the rules of the house, you follow the rules of the home and the culture, and we'll love you. You're good. Soon as you step out of line with the expectations of our culture, of our household, you're out of here. And they'll still keep you around, but you'll notice that difference because kids can pick up on the energy. Human beings are designed to socially engineer people to looking and creating a conditionally loving world. I, I I'm questioning if unconditional love is even possible. Hey, what's up, David Chu? I'm questioning on if unconditional love is even possible on the human plane. I think unconditional is love. Love is possible in the divine plane, in the spiritual and the heavenly plane, because God created us. God is perfect. So I believe only God Himself is capable of unconditionally loving us because He understands and He's able to exceed, the human condition. He's not limited to the human condition, which means he's not limited to the human perception and attitude. He can love beyond our human areas of weakness. He doesn't have to fight against the flesh, essentially. So that opens up another realm from him to be able to love us unconditionally. But I just think as long as we're wearing this human body, we have to accept that unconditional love may not be possible. However, we can receive that unconditional love from the Most High. We have to be able to separate what's for the Lord and for what's God. We have to be able to separate situations that are me and God situations between me and human being situations. We have to look at unconditional love and trust as sacred realities that only God can fulfill 100% of the time. When you replace or substitute a relationship dynamic that's strictly supposed to be between you and God for a human being, you're going to be disappointed every time. When I'm expecting my wife to love me unconditionally, or when I'm expecting her to trust me 100%, or I'm expecting myself to trust her 100%, I'm setting myself up for disappointment because that's not her role. That's not her role to fulfill. And it's not my role to fulfill for her. It's not realistic. Only God can love you unconditionally 100% of the time. Only you can trust God 100% of the time. We're human beings. You have to learn how to adjust your expectations. Sometimes you're going to be able to trust your spouse with certain things. Sometimes you're not because she's still learning or he's still learning. Sometimes I might be able to show up lovingly, and there's going to be some times where I might show up frustrated. Doesn't mean I don't love them, but I may not show up in a long suffering, not keeping records of wrongs way. And we have to understand as men, love and being in love, if that love isn't there or if it's waxing cold, it doesn't necessarily mean your relationship is a failure. It doesn't, because there's going to be moments in life where emotions may not always be fixed and consistent, but it doesn't negate the reality that you two are not committed to each other or willing to do your best for that relationship. And that's the hardest part of a marriage, is when that love is starting to wax cold and you guys are having difficulties and you're keeping record of wrongs and you're kind of challenged. Those are the hardest relationships, is being able to still make it work. You can still make a relationship work even when the love is not as strong as it was in the beginning. Because sometimes a part of your relationship is going to come where your effort and you showing up and investing and participating in either counseling or rebuilding skill in your marriage or your relationship is going to help rebuild that love. It doesn't go the other way. It's not like, oh, if I feel love, then that means we're winning. But when I don't feel love, damn it, this is a waste of money. No, there's going to be times where you're going to wake up next to your spouse and you're going to be like, what the hell did I get myself into? Especially after you hit that fifth year. Fifth year of any relationship is when you really is when you're really hit with the reality of who you chose. Up to 5 years, you're still walking blindfolded. By the fifth year, the fourth, fifth year, you're starting to really lean into, okay, this is who I'm with. And there's going to be moments in your life where you're going to feel like God isn't there, and you're going to feel like God isn't walking with you through these trials or through these struggles. But it doesn't necessarily mean that His word is void. It doesn't mean that His word is less powerful because you don't feel the Lord in your life. There's going to be moments where you're filled with the Spirit and you're filled with the Holy Spirit and you're just rejuvenated and restored and you're going to feel like God is with me. Then there's going to be moments where you feel like God isn't with you, but He still is. So just because you don't feel love for your partner or feel love in yourself doesn't mean it's non-existent or it denotes the reality, because God is love. So just because you don't feel it, just because you don't feel God, doesn't mean God doesn't exist. That's the key. And unconditional love. It's unrealistic to expect unconditional love from anybody but God in this world. Sometimes you got to rewrite the rules. So I'm curious, Chad. I'm curious, you guys viewing, do you believe in unconditional love? Do you believe unconditional love is possible between two human beings, or do you believe God is the only entity that can fulfill that role? I believe anything is possible, and a person can unconditionally love for a time, but I'm talking about forever. Okay, and that's just not rational. It's not rational, and it doesn't mean that you can't continue exercising these principles. And I think for Black men in our community, we have to stay strong and we have to keep exercising these principles, these biblical principles of love for our brothers. We got to continue exercising these principles of love, long suffering, kindness, patience. We may not do it all the time. However, we have to at least be symbols to our brothers that we're trying. I believe that, because that's one thing that starts cold in this world, is just this idea of love and loving each other, and you don't really hear a lot about it right now. Everything is about hate and the hater and this criticism, and everybody's anti and the opposite, and you say yes, they're gonna say no. You say you like it, they're gonna tell you why they don't like it. So unconditional love, Can we unconditionally love each other? Is this expectation of unconditional love what sets a lot of men up for failure in their relationships to others and themselves? Just something to think about. I appreciate you guys tuning in. The day is going well. Everything is going good. My sessions today were awesome. Had some really good therapy sessions, and had some really good insight from one of my therapy sessions where I had a client that was struggling with childhood trauma and not feeling fully loved and supported by her parents and her caregivers. And we were able to make the connection how that feeling of not being loved and provided for by, I think, her mom or her dad, had a girlfriend that was like physically abusing her and talking negative to her and criticizing her. And she developed this inner critic where she's really hard on herself, and now she's hard on her daughter's father because she was able to connect that, hey, when I was growing up, a lot of the problems that we're faced with, a lot of it is a mirror reflection of how we were treated as kids. That's why it's so important, the influences you have around your children. Every adult that's in this live or that's watching this live can relate to connecting an issue that they're dealing with to something that happened in their childhood. And we were able to see how, just from that dynamic of her dad's girlfriend criticizing her and anything she did wasn't good enough and she wanted a toy, she said, oh, you can't have this toy. Just to think that adult would treat a child like that. Because however you treat a child, that's how that adult is going to treat themselves when they become an adult. However you treat your children, or whoever you bring into your life as a partner or a lover or whatever, however they treat them, that's how they're going to treat themselves and others. Children internalize their environment, and that becomes their strategies for interacting with the world and interacting with other people. So you have to be careful what examples you model to your children. So I was doing this session with her. She's almost in her 40s, and she says, I don't like talking about it a lot because it just brings up a lot of pain and suffering, and I try to avoid it. But what we avoid and what we bury to the brain, it becomes involuntary, knee jerk, instinctual reactions that we do that we don't have a choice in. Whatever trauma you bury, whatever pain you bury from childhood becomes autopilot behavior. And you have to process some of that stuff, because you just processing trauma from childhood shifts the content from one side of the brain where it's registered as sights, sensations, and stimuli to a narrative where you can make meaning and make change. So it's so important to talk about it. And I think all human beings, all races, all cultures, we just bite the, yeah, I've been through hell. Yeah, my parents wasn't shit, but whatever. It is what it is. That's not how it works, man. Every adult that you see was once a child. Don't get so caught up in all the 6 feet, all the persons. You don't know what a lot of these people been through in childhood, man. You don't know what type of pain these adults are carrying for childhood. And I think that's what makes racial cohesiveness so difficult, because you got the black folks that's like, man, ain't nobody fucking respect us and love us for being black. Then you got the white folks who are like, shit, I grew up in a fucking neighborhood where my mom and dad were damn near about to kill each other, but everything's about black. Everybody got a fucking story, man. That's why sometimes I even be questioning, just like, damn, like, as much as I want my people to fucking win, I have to accept that I'm in a reality where we ain't the only ones that's taking L. Shit. Because when I'm looking at some of these clients I'm working with, especially from white clients, they dealing with some of the same trauma, man. Sometimes I'll be listening to their stories and I'm just like, damn, you know, it's like being a therapist really opens your mind to this reality that two truths can exist. Yeah, I want my black people to win. I want us to progress and advance. However, I'm also mindful that the world don't fucking revolve around us, and that there's other shit that's going on, and I can't rescue or save everybody. That's not my purpose here. But I'm also mindful that other people are hurting too and suffering too. So I try to walk this body that God has given me with grace. And yeah, man, unconditional love, man. Just think about that. Think about that inner child, that part of you that may be suffering, that may be struggling, and really getting that healing, man. Really getting that healing. All right. So that's all I had, man.